Well, hi there. I'm Jian Ghomeshi, wishing you and your family a good holiday period on behalf of the whole Roqe team. As we move into 2024, we're giving you a special Roqe series, one that we have remastered and done some editing to. This is a special 4-part series entitled Why Pink Floyd? We bring together some of the biggest names in Persian music culture to examine why the supersized and disproportionate Iranian obsession with the iconic British rock band. Was it the music, the iconography, the concepts, the timing, the lyrics, the vibe? We examine all sides in this series. If you missed it the first time, we hope you'll really enjoy this slightly updated edition. We'll be back with a brand new episode of Roqe on January 4th, and you can access all of our older episodes and programming at roqemedia.com. In the meantime, here, now, is Why Pink Floyd, Part 3. This is Why Pink Floyd, an Iranian Obsession, Part 3, coming to you on SoundCloud, Instagram, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and Telegram. Also, for all our episodes in one place, you can see them at our website, roqemedia.com. So here's a little bit of what we heard on Part 2 of this series.
You wake up and you have a message in from one of the people that inspired you to become an artist in musically, socially, spiritually, in every way you can think. And there is this note from Roger that's gone out to the world of his support for us.
Something that Iranians don't like is the distortion sound of guitar. So Pink Floyd has this pleasant, charming sound of the guitar.
اون موسیقی راک و بلوزی که طبقه پایین جامعه در مثلا امریکا، انگلیس و اینا گوش میکردن، اون موسیقی در ایران یک چیز دیگری بوده.
The first time I bought my electric bass, I was in high school, and the first song I started playing with that was Comfortably Numb.
On this episode, we address drugs, access, and melancholy with Arash Sobhani in Stockholm, Siamak Shirazi in Portland, Oregon, Maral Mohammadi in London, and Ehsan Sadigh in Toronto. Here now is Part 3 of Why Pink Floyd, an Iranian Obsession. Here we go. Let's get to Part 3 of our series. Our first guest in Part 3 is a renowned musician, producer, television host. He is the lead singer and guitarist of the underground rock band Kiosk. Arash Sobhani was born and raised in Tehran and moved to the United States in 2005 to release Kiosk's first album, Ordinary Man. Since then, Kiosk have released 9 albums and have toured all over the world. In 2019, Arash produced the hit series Persia's Got Talent for the MBC Persia Network. His other projects in TV include Nowruz Special, On 10 for VOA, and Studio 13 for Iran International. And right now, Arash Sobhani joins me from Stockholm, Sweden. Hello, sir.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
What a great pleasure it is to have you on to talk Floyd. I am very curious to hear your take on this hypothesis around the connection between Pink Floyd and Iranians. Let me start with this. You're a guitarist, you're a singer, you're a songwriter. How aware of Pink Floyd were you when you were growing up as a very little kid in Iran in the 70s and then the 1980s?
Oh, well, you know, we all grew up with listening to the cassette tapes that was left for us from uncles, brothers, or whoever had left the country in '79, and they left a vast amount of music with them because music stopped coming to Iran after the revolution. So Pink Floyd was everybody had it, everybody listened to it. We grew up with it. We learned to speak English with the songs. It was a huge influence, and I remember from the very first basement jam sessions that we had, we tried to play Pink Floyd, and still goes on. Still, when I'm at a party, people ask hey, can you do Wish You Were Here? Can you do this? Can you do that? Yeah, so it's a big part of our music culture.
So you were a fan?
I am a fan. I am a fan of Pink Floyd, but I also do think that, with all due respect and all the, I've been to their concerts and I listen to them from time to time, but I do think that they're disproportionately bigger than everywhere else in Iran, Turkey, Lebanon, and those countries in the region.
Okay, so let's get into that. Why do you think Iranians love Pink Floyd so much?
Well, it's really could be a subject for a book, I think. Somebody has to do a proper research on it. But I have my own theories that I've thought about throughout the years, because I've also witnessed a lot of my friends that who are really into music and listen to different genres. They start to hate Pink Floyd because there's so many. They hear it all the time whenever they go, and everybody's talking about them in Iran, and they started to just kind of like start to dislike this band because it was so became a quiche almost.
Right.
But I think it has to do with I'm sure that everybody talked about the melancholy that's in the music, and also with the timing of the wall and the revolution and things like that. But I think I have a couple other things I can add to this. One is I think the music came to Iran. The music that came to Iran, the rock music that came to Iran, it was mostly the UK charts and Germany especially. The music was, people who traveled to Europe, they brought back music with them, LPs and cassettes, and there was less of American music. It was the American music that got to Iran was through the musicians who were big in UK already, like Jimi Hendrix and those guys. And I'm talking about, serious music,
right.
Those people who really do this like religiously. And Germany has this huge traditional krautrock. It's very psychedelic. I think it outdates the British version. And I think Pink Floyd was heavily influenced by those bands, like the krautrock musicians, and therefore Pink Floyd was huge in Germany and Netherlands, and a lot of those guys contributed to the music that came to Iran. So I think that's one of the reasons that some bands are very famous in Iran and nobody's ever heard of them in America, like Modern Talking.
Yes.
California, and the concert, my friends went to it and said it was only Iranians and Russians. There was not a single American in the show.
I can say to you, as someone who's been immersed in music for a lifetime, I had never heard of Modern Talking. When my cousin asked me if he was going to the concert last year when they came to Toronto, or a couple of years ago, and he was shocked. What do you mean, Modern Talking? And then I was to discover it's this horrible Euro disco, weird, bad pop thing, but clearly resonating for Iranians. So it was one of those things that got in there that's very distinct and different from Pink Floyd, of course. But
yeah, exactly. But I think the fact that it's big in Iran is because it was big in Germany, and it was big in Turkey.
Interesting.
And that's where they brought the music from. And also the other way around, like when I went to America, when I was a teenager first time, I went to a record store and I asked them, like, do you have Eloy or Jane? And they were like looking at me like, what the hell is that? And those are German rock bands that are very big in Iran again. And nobody's heard of them in America. So I think that part of the popularity of Pink Floyd has to do with the fact that the music came to Iran through people who traveled to UK and Germany and Europe mainly. Like
That's
Bruce
interesting.
Springsteen, people know him in Iran, but he's not the boss,
So can I just to travel down that road for a second? Were Scorpions big in Iran?
Oh, it's huge, yeah.
Oh,
Scorpions are huge.
okay.
And I think, with all the respect, again, I think they're the worst rock band ever.
Well, yeah, they're not that huge in North. I mean, they were pretty big, but not huge. So I see. So there's a Germany-Iran connection that we have to mine.
Yeah, exactly.
But okay, let me just go 2 steps back though, because when you say the revolution happens, and we all know, what happens around 1979. This iron wall suddenly, upon culture, kind of everything stops. Everything is retarded by a new repressive culture that doesn't allow for a lot of rock music, et cetera, to come into the country or to be made there. So you say older brothers and sisters and families are passing down cassettes, but clearly they weren't passing down the cassettes of the Rolling Stones or the Who. I mean, I'm bereft to remember any Iranians coming up to me, certainly not Iranians who are now in their 20s, 30s, and 40s and saying, yeah, man, Exile on Main Street or Some Girls, these Rolling Stones albums, they're my Bible. But they know Pink Floyd. They know the back catalog of Pink Floyd. So there was something even pre-revolution about Floyd that was resonating.
That's very true. That's very true. And I think that comes to the second reason that I believe it has contributed to this, and that's the drug culture that was in Iran and goes very well with Pink Floyd music. I mean, when you listen to David Gilmour's solos, you can almost smell the hash. And I think that's what made it really attractive among the music lovers in Iran, because that was the popular drug for the teenagers. And it was, I think, from what I heard, I wasn't into those things. I was too young for that. But from what I heard, that's, they all have memories of, oh yeah, we went to so-and-so's party, we smoked some hash, and we listened to Shine On Crazy Bang. It was such a trip. And that was the thing.
That certainly resonates for me, because growing up in Canada, in my high school, it was we called it kind of a stoner school, and stoners were into Pink Floyd. I mean, we were a little young for the 70s Pink Floyd, but we would rediscover those records like a Dark Side of the Moon or whatever. But how does drug culture intersect with Iran in the years after the revolution in the 80s and 90s? Was that a thing? I know people talk about drugs in Iran now, but what was the place of drugs in those decades after the revolution?
Yeah, I think when you listen to Delta blues, you can almost taste the bourbon, or you listen to Iranian traditional, you can smell the opium, and that really has, the music has a really, really tight connection with all these alcohol and drug users. But I think in the 80s also, in like the 70s, there was still the culture of, these traditional weed and hash smokers that were around. Like now, it has changed a lot, with all these chemicals and all these stuff that people are doing right now with the pills and ecstasy and this and that. But I think back then still it was around, and that still was the culture. And because the name of the last album that was published before the revolution was The Wall, and people related to that so much, it also kind of like felt like, okay, you understand what he's talking about, but without even knowing a word of English. You just had to know The Wall. I think all of those, the mixture of all these elements kind of started to get Pink Floyd to a level of that is like, I'm pretty sure if Roger Waters runs for president in Iran, Turkey, or Lebanon, he will win with no doubt.
That certainly seems to be true. I want to get to The Wall. Let me ask you first, as a musician and with someone who has a keen sense of musicality, why do you believe that Iranians gravitate towards what is, these are reductive labels, but what has been called progressive rock? So you would include Pink Floyd in that, but a bunch of other bands that I'm noticing that Iranians of a certain vintage, millennials or Gen Xers, know that you wouldn't really find the average Westerner, unless they're a real music fan or really into that genre, would know. King Crimson or Yes, or these prog rock bands. What is it that Iranians have gravitated towards when it comes to that? Why is that so appealing?
I think part of it also has to do with Iranians just love nostalgia, and because time has frozen for us in 1979. It's like every morning that I think every Iranian wakes up every morning and thinking about like what happened on February 11, 1979. Still, we can't believe it. And how did we do this? How did this happen? So we kind of got stuck there. And this music takes us back to the good days in the 70s when people were like having fun and listening to Western music and we're up to date. And they were just stuck there, like going to Cuba and seeing all these old cars with time stopped. I think nostalgia has a lot to do with it. But you have you brought up a very good point that I don't have an answer for, and it beats me, because The Who and Tommy,
Right.
is a concept album, and it's great, and it's before The Wall, or the album School by Supertramp, which Supertramp is big in Iran, but still they're not nearly anything close to especially the Who. I don't think people.
But the Who were a straight ahead rock band, even though very conceptual in some ways, etc. They don't fall as much in that. They fall into what we, in the West we call classic rock versus progressive rock, right? And it is very curious to me. I mean, I don't hear of a lot of young Iranian bands doing covers of Teenage Wasteland, or My Generation, but Wish You Were Here, or Songs from the Wall, another Brick in the Wall is our mainstays. So there's something in the water there that we need to discover.
Exactly. I think it's a combination of different elements, and that has made this band so popular in Iran. To me, it's the melancholy tone, and the songs are really, really dark, and Iranians gravitate towards that, and nostalgia that brings back good old days when they listen to the song. Still, he and to be fair, they have a great catalog, but The Wall is their most commercialized, I think, the most pop sounding album.
Yes.
But that's the biggest, I think, in Iran. Every Iranian probably has heard of it or has it, and along with Aghe Rozbe Safar by Farmaz Aslani. All the guitar players know a song from The Wall, and that song.
As a guitarist, were you influenced by Gilmour? Are you somebody who would sit there and try and learn the licks of David Gilmour, or as opposed to Slash or Eddie Van Halen or Jeff Beck or Clapton or anybody else?
Honestly, not. Honestly, I was really. The reason I started playing guitar was because I heard Mark Knopfler on radio one day, and I just thought, this is how the guitar should sound, and I picked up a guitar. And then later, I discovered Eric Clapton, and to me, he's just an amazing storyteller when he starts. And to me, again, I'm not at a level to say these things about David Gilmour. He's an amazing guitarist, but I always think like it's the same melody, same lines every single time, as opposed to Clapton that improvises, and every time you hear different it's the same story, but it's a different way of telling the story, when you hear his hits. And Clapton is just like, he becomes one with the guitar. He's not just performing as a piece that's written. It's not as melodic, it's more free form, and I think that was more attractive to me as a guitar player. I never wanted to be like that.
You've crossed the line. Lay off Gilmour, all right? He's a genius.
He is. No doubt. But he wasn't like my role model as a guitar player.
Right. Let me ask you something, Arash. We do like to say as Iranians, and of course I think there's some merit to this, that we have this incredible tradition of poetry and lyricism, and that has seeped through the years and the generations, and it affects and infects everything that we find attractive. But I sometimes worry that that's a little self-congratulatory. Of course, we like the profound things because we're so profound. Do you think, there is a theory that Iranians like Pink Floyd because of the mysticism and the poeticism of the lyrics. Do you think that there's something to that?
No, I don't believe so, because I think I agree with you totally that we kind of we give ourselves too much credit sometimes for we have a great literature history, no doubt, but so do the Japanese or the Armenians or other countries that have a rich history in literature. But I was actually thinking about this when we started the discussion. Like someone like Bob Dylan, he's to me the ultimate poet.
Right.
Cohen. Cohen is more popular in Iran, but Bob Dylan. One thing that when these younger kids who are starting to write music come to me and say, okay, do you have anything to tell us? And I said, just go listen to Bob Dylan and see if you can internalize what he's saying and try to try to do the same in Farsi and see how difficult that is, and see how easily he goes from love to politics to death, and it just all makes sense, and it's so natural, and it all so deep. But people in Iran are not really into that. I don't think they really listen to the lyrics, because a lot of the lyrics that Pink Floyd has is really not as deep as you think. When something doesn't make sense, you can feel like, okay, it might mean this or it might mean that, and you just get your own interpretation. But Bob Dylan is the ultimate poet, and he's not as half as popular as
and if it was just about the anti-establishment, I mean, I get that The Wall came out in November 1979. There's an amazing synergy there, and this record is almost like it's speaking for the Iranian youth. And of course, then, I mean, we have the example of the kids Blurred Vision, who 10 years ago put out the Hey Ayatollah song, and that becomes a viral hit. But there was a lot of there are. I mean, the Clash are an anti-establishment rebellious band, but I don't. Again, if you just take any one of these elements, it's hard to make the case that that's the reason why, they resonated for Iranians. Maybe it's the cocktail of all of them put together.
I think it's the cocktail. I agree. I think it's the cocktail of all of them. And I also think, especially after the revolution, we had no music program in Iran. We had no critics, critics coming and talking about the albums and saying, okay, this album came out, this is good about it, this is bad about it, we rate it like this or that, and we didn't have anything. So it was just like word of mouth, and all the things that Pink Floyd talk about. And here's another criticism. I hope I don't cross the line again, but one big criticism that I have for Pink Floyd is that all the things that they say in the lyrics, but look at it, look at the band. They didn't speak to each other for almost 40 years.
Right.
Rick Wright was not even a member of a band, and there was so much, the dirt there under the rug, that it just, everything they say doesn't really stand up as true when it comes to themselves and brotherly love. And we know Roger Waters is a pro-hunting person, and things like that. It just doesn't add up. I mean,
they're aristocrats. I mean, they're
yes.
actually, they're. I don't even think they would shy from saying. I mean, they're elites. They live in castles. It's
exactly
as they should, as very successful businessmen and musicians as well. But they're interesting champions of the working people.
Yeah, but I prefer the artist who actually lives what he says, and I don't think. So there's a sense of sincerity that's sometimes missing, especially in the later works.
Although Roger Waters, of course, has been quite consistent about his politics, so you sort of can't take that away from him. His consistency in terms of what he says over the years. You said something interesting. Before I let you go, it'd be remiss if I didn't pick up on this with the opportunity to speak to you, because you're a great songwriter and you write songs that resonate for Iranians. You talked about how Melancholy really resonates for Iranians, and this is true. Not even. I mean, post-revolution, you'd say, oh, that's because there was a revolution, there were executions, there was a war, there's economic disparity. But it's true of the music before the revolution as well. That songs are very sad, and even the songs that sound upbeat. When I learned the lyrics, I realized, oh, this is a very sad song. This is.
Yeah.
Have you discovered what that is? Why we have this knee-jerk or reflexive kind of desire to consume melancholy material?
Well, it's I think it's a very deep conversation and discussion that probably there has been researchers on this, but I feel like it's like a football team that gets used to losing, and it just can't handle winning, and I think that's the case with a lot of old countries like Iran, Egypt, and these older countries that have gone through a lot. You forget about your happy moments in life very quickly. You think that's how life should be. But when you fail or when there's a scar, it stays with you, and you just look at it and it's always there. And we have a lot of scars as a nation, and we have a lot of dark episodes in our history that just stayed. And I think that's the reason we kind of gravitate towards that kind of melody and music. And I've been thinking about the concept of love in different nations and different people, and I think like the way Iranian poet and artist looks at it, it comes with a failure. It's never about making it. It's always about losing it, and that says a lot about culture, I think. And I hope we can change that. I hope that even if there are dark periods of history or things that are not very, I don't know, upbeat, we can talk about them in a different attitude, at least be optimistic or be hopeful. That's one thing that's missing.
It's a powerful metaphor, the football team metaphor, Arash. Although I suspect you're speaking about Arsenal, my team, so I get sad when you
name many names, but yeah, you said it.
A final question to you, and I know these are not easy questions to answer, but just from your own perspective as a musician and somebody who's steeped in Persian culture, this disproportionate affection that Iranians have had for Pink Floyd, what do you think the impact of Pink Floyd has been on Iranian music, on Iranian musicians in recent decades?
Yes, I think they had a very powerful presence in the underground music scene in Iran. When I was growing up, going to parties or going to jam sessions, everybody played one number at least from Pink Floyd. But I see that it's declining, and it's about time. There are new sounds that coming. I think with the all the effects and technology that's coming, people are, and internet, of course, you have access to more music and more compositions and sound effects and things like that. And one other thing that maybe I can add to your first question about why Pink Floyd is popular is also about their amazing use of sound and bringing in like different sound effects, background sounds and stuff like that, how they mixed it with real life. It became like part of you were in the conversation with John Lennon sitting there and stuff like that. You could hear people talking, you could hear the money, in the money songs, you could hear the coins and things like that. I think that was very fresh and new, but that has lost its appeal, I think. And I see a lot of, new bands that are kind of steering away from the Pink Floyd effect, and less Pink Floyd sound comes out of there, but still big and still huge.
Arash Sobhani, I thank you so much for being part of this. You were very modest to say that the experts will know more. Your insights and your experience were great. It was great to hear you on this. Thanks, and I look forward to having you back on the show, my brother.
Thank you so much. It was good talking to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Between a second scene, the fight between the blue you once knew. Floating down, the sound resounds around the icy waters underground. Jupiter and Saturn over on Miranda and Titania. Neptune, Titan, stars can frighten.
There's some early Floyd for you. You are listening to part 3 of a Roqe special, Why Pink Floyd, an Iranian Obsession. We're coming to you on SoundCloud, Instagram, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and Telegram. For all of our episodes of this series and all of our episodes of Roqe in general, you can see them, listen to them at our website, roqemedia.com. My next guest is an Iranian-American entrepreneur and philanthropist who has worked in the field of wellness-based medicine since the early 1990s. But in addition to his growing wellness-based medicine enterprise, Siamak Shirazi is a musician, songwriter, and singer who has toured professionally after arriving in the United States in the 1980s and has recently been releasing new songs, including compositions and collaborations with the great Babak Amini. Siamak is a long-time Pink Floyd fan and no stranger to interesting theories. Siamak Shirazi joins me from Portland, Oregon right now. Hello, sir.
Hello, Jian. How are you?
I'm great. I know you well enough to know you have theories. I know you well enough to know that you're a Pink Floyd fan. So I can dispense with the part about whether you know Floyd and whether you even know that there's a disproportionate connection between Iranians and Pink Floyd, it seems. So let's get straight to you and Floyd, which is how aware of Pink Floyd were you before you arrived in America in the 1980s?
Well, before we get to that, I should say that I am truly honored, Jian, to be a part of your program. As you know, I have been a fan of you for years before Roqe, and I really appreciate what you're doing with Roqe. Thank you for inviting me. And now let's get into it.
You're so kind. I'm tempted to end the interview right now because on a high note before I hear your crazy Pink Floyd theories. But
thank you. So you invited me to be the crazy voice.
On the contrary, you're the soothing wellness guy. So, but really, how did you? When were you first aware of this band, Pink Floyd?
Probably when I was 9 or 10 years old, and I had an uncle who at the time was in his early 20s, and he listened to mostly non-Iranian music, what came from the West. And through him, I was introduced to a lot of great Western music, and of course, Pink Floyd was at the top of the list. And you know, from there, I started my own, if you will, discovery. Of course, we had limited resources even before the revolution, especially for a teenager or a young kid. But yeah, I started my Pink Floyd journey at about 10 years old.
Really? So even it wasn't just that you were exposed to them at 10, but you actually, the music appealed to you even as a 10-year-old?
It did. Mm-hmm. Yes. And interestingly enough, you know, most of my friends at the time listen to Western music mostly to dance, you know, but some of us, there was a small group of us who listened to rock music, you know, psychedelic rock, and Pink Floyd resonated with us, probably because of their, you know, I go deeper into this. If you know, as you know, I sent you a preface to this book that one day you're going to write about this whole thing.
Let me give the background on this, because you were actually one of the precipitants for me doing this special, because I mentioned that I've got to write a book because I'm preoccupied with the connection that Iranians seem to have with Pink Floyd. And then you, I mean, we know each other, we've got each other's contact information. You send me this. You say, here's the introduction to your book, and this is where all your crazy theories about Pink Floyd were put on paper. But they were tremendously interesting and indeed a precipitant for this special. So let me get to that part, because you're now talking about when you're 10 years old. I'm guessing that was the 1970s.
Correct. Yes.
So,
I was born in 1965. So
okay.
1975, 1976.
So there's a lot of different theories that have emerged throughout this special. Like, for example, that Pink Floyd wasn't anything special in terms of the disproportionately more successful in Iran until after the revolution and after the wall. And then there are others, for example, Arash Sobhani said, no, this came out of the drug culture of the 70s of Iran, and Pink Floyd were always big, and that's why after the revolution, brothers and sisters started to pass this down to their younger siblings, and how the music got traded and access to new generations. How about I just start off with the general question of why do you think Iranians love Pink Floyd so much?
You know, some of what you said is actually very true in my opinion as well, in terms of the wall being the true connection or start of a true deeper connection for the masses. Not just in Iran, actually, probably the whole planet, and maybe in the Middle East more so. You know, I remember when the wall came out, I was of course a teenager, but we lined up, and it was at the beginning of the revolution. So the suppression of music was not there yet. It was
that's
getting
interesting.
There.
That's so interesting, because it comes out November 30th, 1979. So it's kind of mid-revolution. This hasn't occurred to me yet. So actually, the wall technically probably was accessible for a few months before everything cracked down, is what you're saying, yes?
Very true, yes. And that also played a role into its fame because, in a way, it was one of the very last albums or works from the West that we were able to attain. And we lingered to it and listened to it because for a couple, 3 years, actually, at the beginning of the revolution, things got really hard in terms of suppressing music. As you know, our friend Bobak has stories about how he carried his guitar in a garbage bag just because it was so hard, especially Western music became this, element of West and they were trying to suppress it. But yes, so the wall was when we all started to have this kind of religious relationship, if you will, with Pink Floyd because the lyrics resonated with us so deeply. We started having to basically go through new educational reforms in Iran. And a year before, we were studying English, for example, as a second language, and now we had to study Arabic. And not that there's anything wrong with Arabic, but for us, it was this thing that was forced down our throat, against our will. And so we hated it. And of course, in some of their lyrics, and I was talking to a friend of mine, I should say this, a few days ago, and I mentioned this is what I'm doing. And he said, of course, everyone knows why Pink Floyd is famous all over the world, because nobody wants to go to school. But yeah, so for us, it was a symbol of resistance in our mind, especially the wall.
So you're someone who firmly, you're in the camp that believes that the anti-establishment, anti-authoritarianism, anti-government, anti-oppression kind of lyrics and rebellious sort of undertone of the wall is something that resonated and would do so through the 1980s then and beyond for Iranian youth.
That was definitely a big part of it. But also, I basically have two main theories, as I mentioned in my preface to your book. One is this utilitarian aspect of Pink Floyd's music. And as you know, I study, and by the way, this is a disclaimer, I am not a Pink Floyd expert to everyone.
That's okay.
I got myself into this because of our conversations, but I love them. Yeah. So I haven't studied Pink Floyd. There are people who have dissertations, PhD dissertations about Pink Floyd. But in my opinion, yes, their music, so sound waves, travel through space by vibrating, air molecules. And when they reach our being, when they reach our body, they not only enter our body through our ears, but they actually shake our entire body and our entire being. So our whole being is affected by sound waves. In fact, as you know, they use sound waves therapeutically for years and years now in medicine, because of this quality of sound waves being able to affect us at the cellular level. So somehow Pink Floyd's music was able to do that with us in an unconscious level. And in my mind, that explains their global fame. People didn't understand the lyrics really, didn't even know the meanings of it, or let alone the rationale behind it, or all this kind of cultural issues that Pink Floyd was singing about in their own culture. But it resonated with them just simply because somehow they were able to tap in to that part of music as this sound wave which kind of affects you and rattles you and shakes you.
Okay, but that wouldn't just be true of Pink Floyd. That would be true of a myriad other bands that play loud or interesting or atmospheric or rock music, right?
Absolutely. And Pink Floyd is not the first one, but one thing was unique to them was the way that they utilize, these long stretch of instrumental musics without any lyrics.
Yes.
And their lyrics were very, very simple, actually, very simplistic and brief. And it was like they were throwing this idea at you, and then they will hit you with a few minutes of really beautiful music. And that combination, in my mind, didn't need the audience or the listener to understand the lyrics as much to love it and to be affected by it.
It's interesting that you should say, sorry to cut you off. It's interesting
No
that
problem.
you should say the last part there, because there's been a suggestion that the traditions of Iranian, Persian classical music, and even Persian contemporary pop music, right up until at least late era 70s stuff, is steeped in long form composition, is steeped in these protracted pieces that can be improvisational, they can be quite long, they can be meandering or musically adventurous, and that is more in sync with what Pink Floyd does or did in say the 1970s than cookie cutter pop songs. Does that resonate for you?
Absolutely. That's actually my second point in my argument. And that's very true. Because, in a way, if you think about it, we were, so the act of listening to Western music, especially after revolution, post-revolution, and especially at the beginning when they didn't want you to, was in a way a countercultural act and rebellion act. So deep down, we wanted it to do this. And Pink Floyd allowed us to do that, to listen to Western music, but in a way, subconsciously, very similar to our own traditional Persian music, style of music. So I think for Iranians, that was another connection. That was another deep connection. And not just that, their lyrics, the mysticism that was peppered all over their lyrics, this existential crises, these questions they kept asking of the authority or why or how, we are here for what, things like that. That was our Iranian traditional music basically is made that way. They borrow lyrics from classics like Rumi, Hafiz, Sadi, as you know, and they write these long songs, several minutes long, sometimes even half an hour of music with only maybe 5 or 7 minutes of lyrics in it. And that was very similar to what Pink Floyd did. So it gave us that deep unconscious connection with our root, which was, culturally, music was to stimulate the spiritual part of you, but also we were able to listen to rock and roll.
I love the opportunity to ask you these questions because you were a rock singer. You were there at the exact time. You're in your late teens by the late 70s when all of this is happening. One question I have with respect to the rebelliousness, the anti-establishment, as even leading up to the revolution, you think about the fervent sort of anti-authority or let's overthrow the monarchy sort of mood in the streets of some youth, at least in the 77, 78. Why wouldn't punk rock appeal to people? I mean, where were the Sex Pistols or the Clash, who obviously had put out records by that time that were popular or gaining popularity in the West? Why wouldn't, if people were gravitating towards rebellious stuff, where was that?
Well, as you know, we did listen to all of that. It was not that we only listened to Pink Floyd, and they all had their room, their place. But maybe Pink Floyd was different because how in our traditional music we separate someone like Mr. Shajarian with the rest. Everyone has a voice and everyone has something to say. But most of their music was love songs, ballads, about human connections, if you will.
Right.
Pink Floyd was kind of unique of asking these existential questions and go deeper. Their lyrics were very philosophical, and at least for us, we perceived it like that, So I think, there are a couple of examples. Even before revolution, I exactly vividly remember sitting in my uncle's car, driving in Tehran when there were a lot of protesting happening. And he was young and I was, go wherever he went. And we went to see what's going on, basically. and he was playing, animals, and we were listening to, have you heard the news? The dogs are dead. You better stay home and do as you're told. Get out of the road if you want to grow old. So even before Revolution, we thought, hey, they made this song for now, for what we are dealing with,
Right. There's another layer of the music that they were making in the 70s that would then continue through the 80s and beyond. That Arash Sobhani, who was just on this part 3 before you, obviously he's a musician and has his take on the dominance or the interest in Pink Floyd in Iran. And he talked about the melancholy nature of the sound of their music and their lyrics. And that is something, I know you know this intimately, but that is something that Iranians have gravitated towards for decades, if not forever, I guess. I don't know. You'd have to tell me. But this notion that we, on some level and for a number of different reasons, are attracted to sadness, sad lyrics, sad melodies, or sad messaging, and that or at least melancholy, and that is something that we could find in, through the grooves of Dark Side of the Moon. Talk to me about that and whether that makes sense to you.
Yeah, we are getting into an interesting territory because it's a cultural phenomenon for us to appreciate or to connect sadness to depth in music, in poetry, in art in general. And this is a very Iranian thing, actually. Somehow, I don't know how or when, maybe because of maybe it's post-Islamic. This is just something that I'm coming up with right now, but maybe because of the suppression again of religious, studies or practices, maybe we came up with this connection with melancholy and sadness as something valuable, deep, to cherish, and happiness and joy and dance as something superficial. In fact, if you go back to even pop music of the 70s, famous singers like Daryush and Sattar and Ebi and Gugush, most of their songs, maybe not much Gugush, but the guys was sad. Yeah, pretty much, exactly. Yeah. And I fall in love with you, and as the result, I'm gonna become, I don't know, heroin addict, and I'm gonna kill myself. Pretty much, that was, I think it's because.
But even the upbeat stuff after, like what's that song, Darin Zamune vai 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 vai, like that's played at weddings, and the lyrics are like, you were always leaving me, you're a traitor, like our relationship is over. I mean, it's crazy, this thing, this gravitation towards just like the morbid, the sadness, but that makes a lot of sense if you listen to. I mean, I don't think you need to just listen to Floyd and be. I mean, there's a way to listen to Pink Floyd and not be sad at all. But it feels like melancholy music, doesn't it?
It does, and actually, their lyrics, as the gentleman you were talking about mentioned, most of it is not happy stuff. Most of it is longing, it's sad, it's questioning life in general, and that I'm sure had a lot to do with their fame in Iran, because we associate that to depth, and we all feel good, better about listening, or at the time, I should say, as a young teenagers, we want to act older than our age and more sophisticated, and in deeper connection with life and the meaning of life. So that was a way for us to display that. Listening to stuff like Pink Floyd or even our traditional music gave us that opportunity, that outlet.
when you first arrive in America, I remember the story that you end up in California. You're completely new to the country. You're trying to figure out where you fit in, how you fit in, and all that. But you're this musician. You're this little rock and roll kid. You're still very young. You end up touring with Vigen in California, like as his opening act. I'm just wondering, would you cover Pink Floyd at that time? Would Pink Floyd music even enter into what you guys would be doing around that time?
Unfortunately, no, I did not. I did sing other English songs, but not Pink Floyd, because LA culture of the 80s, it was 1985, 86, was not really, didn't want to do that, didn't want to deal with that. Everybody was there to party. Everybody was there to have fun and to kind of, they celebrate this kind of fleeing the suppression or death because when I got to U.S., Iran was in the middle of a war with Iraq, and I actually lost a great friend of mine in that war. So it was like you literally, could die in Iran. So you were celebrating life in this place that everybody thought it was heaven. But no, unfortunately, I didn't sing any Pink Floyd, but I did sing other Western songs. And one of the songs that I sang, actually, maybe not very much known by Westerners, was Prison Song, which was sang by Nash, and it was written about kids being put in prison because of drug charges in U.S. Very, very minimal drug charge, but for years, 10 or 15 years. And that resonated with me because my friends were put in jail for, I don't know, having a long hair or listening to music loud in their car and so on and so on. In fact, I have gotten into trouble several times in Iran. I was thrown out of university because of that. One of my poems, I was writing poetry at the time, got me into trouble. So there's stuff like that that we revolted against and felt like, when I got to U.S., I just had to live up as much as I could.
You might know this because you've been in the West for 3 decades or so. But in the West, growing up as a kid, for me in the '80s, getting to know of Pink Floyd, there was very much an association with drug culture. I went to what I've said this a couple times on this, but like a stoner high school where and there was a lot of Floyd, it'd be like people with a jean jacket and long stringy hair, and like Floyd sort of written on the back of the jean jacket, and you'd smoke a joint and listen to Floyd. That was or much more so, do like hallucinogenic drugs or something. There's been a couple of folks who've spoken to this on this special, saying that actually there was that kind of drug culture in Iran, especially in the 1970s. That is where there was also an intersection with Pink Floyd. Does that make sense to you?
It does, for sure. Yes. Pot in general was just introduced to Iran in the late 70s, early 80s, at least in a more kind of mass or easier to reach way. And that had a lot to do with not just Pink Floyd, but psychedelic rock in general. Bands like Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin. We listened to them sometimes when we got high on grass, on weed. For me, that was it. I unfortunately or fortunately didn't go any further than that. But and again, it goes back to this idea of I'm above this earthly stuff. I can see through the meaning of life even when I'm 17 or 18, especially when I'm high on pot and listening to Pink Floyd. So it definitely had a lot to do with gravitating to Pink Floyd or psychedelic rock in general. Sure.
I just want to drill down a little bit more because it's just so interesting to me. So you line up for the Wall in late November of assuming the album came out in Iran at the same time it was released in other places, because its official release date was November 30th, 1979. So let's say it came out within that time period or a couple months later or whatever, but it's before you say everything shuts down in terms of access to music in Iran. So what happens immediately in the next next few years. This is endlessly interesting for me and very sad for somebody who didn't grow up there. I'm always curious how music was accessed, how it was passed along, how people even discovered bands like Pink Floyd after the Iron Curtain of sorts, whatever you want to call it, after the sort of state shuts everything down. Talk to me about those early years before you come to the United States and how music was traded, how you even found things like Pink Floyd.
Sure. Well, obviously, before Revolution, there were few outlets, and I grew up in Tehran. I was born and raised in Tehran. So Tehran had several record stores, and Beethoven actually, I believe, still exists to this day, which was one of the most famous ones, especially for classical music. But they had all kinds of music. The one that I went to as a kid was this place called Ali Qapu. And it was inside of Bazar Safavieh, which was a kind of a hip boutique style, mall in Iran, in Tehran. And what they did is they used reel to reel, and they somehow got these albums, and this was all bootlegged. I'm sure they never got any. Pink Floyd didn't get a cent of royalty from what happened in Iran.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But they used, and then they produced cassettes, bootleg cassettes.
Sorry, this is after the revolution now, right?
This is after the revolution,
yeah.
yes.
Forgive me for if these are naive questions, but how can a store that sells music exist if music was against the law?
Sure, I was getting to that.
Okay.
For about a year, Jian, after the revolution, things actually were very free. Where they were even freer than previously, before revolution. We went through this very brief, unfortunately, brief period of freedom in Iran. The press and social gatherings and political organizations. We had several of them publicly, and it lasted, I want to say, maybe a year or a little more than a year, and then it all got shut down very heavily. And then we went through 2 or 3 years of suppression after that, and then right around 1980, I believe, is when the war started with Iran-Iraq war, and that all kind of made things even more closed and suppressed. So Ali Qapu was still selling records up to maybe 1980, 1981, I want to say, and then it was closed after that. Or I should say, maybe it wasn't closed, but it was only allowed to sell Iranian traditional music.
Right.
So we still that's how we got access. And then after that, we had friends who had reel-to-reel in their homes, and then somebody smuggles a cassette, and cassette was the main form of music at that time. The music got massively, produced, and then they would kind of bootleg it and then sell it or give it away. And that's how music got out. But and sorry, what was your question?
No, this is exactly what I was asking about. How music was accessed in those early years. Yeah. Wow. Well, it is so interesting getting to talk to you. You are so, we could just do this entire special with you. And we should do an entire special with you. Let me end by, or at least end this conversation for now. I'm sure it will continue off the air and on future episodes, by asking you, what era of Pink Floyd now? What is the album that really sticks with you? What is the song, if you were to go home and want to put something on and close your eyes and let your mind expand, with the help of drugs or not? What is the one that sticks out for you now?
Wow, this is a little personal, actually. I had a friend who lost his life in the war that we fought with Iraq for a number of years, and we used to listen to Pink Floyd together, and we actually listened to "Wish You Were Here" together. Wow. And and one of the first things I did actually when I got to U.S. was I went to Pacific Coast Highway with this little rinky-dinky car that I had, and and it didn't have a stereo, so I borrowed someone's Walkman, a friend's Walkman, and listened to Wish You Were Here while I was walking on the beach in his memory. And to this day, that is the song for me. But I love Dark Side of the Moon. I even like their stuff after The Wall, which was mainly David Gilmour and Nick Mason and Roger Waters didn't have much to do with it. And in fact, I went to their concert in LA. They had this album, Division Bell.
I saw that tour too. 94,
yes.
95.
So I like everything they do. If Roger Waters is here, I'll go see. If Pink Floyd is here, whoever is here. But Wish You Were Here is personal to me because of Saeed, because of my friend who lost his life.
That's a beautiful story. Again, I so much appreciate the time you've taken, your insights, and it's really nice to have you on Roqe, my friend, and I look forward to more, and I look forward to seeing you in person. You take care of yourself in Portland.
Thank you. Same to you, brother.
Khodafis.
Khodafis.
So you think you could tell heaven from hell, blue skies from pain? Can you tell a green field from a cold steel rail, a smile from a veil? Do you think you can tell? Did they get you to trade your heroes for ghosts, hot ashes for trees, hot air for a cool breeze, cold comfort for change? Did you exchange a walk-on part in the war for a lead role in a cage?
You are listening to part 3 of a Roqe special series, Why Pink Floyd? An Iranian Obsession. If you like what you're hearing and you want to hear more from Roqe, you can subscribe on any of our platforms, SoundCloud, Instagram, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Telegram. You can subscribe on all of them, actually. And also find all of our episodes, including all of the episodes of this original series, at our website, roqemedia.com. There's a whole page devoted to this special there. Our next guest is a musician and TV producer and host based in London, England. Maral Mohammadi was born in Tehran, where she studied music. She moved to London to continue her studies in cello performance and composition. After getting her master's, Maral worked as a cellist and composer for many years, collaborating with prominent artists such as Mark Lockhart, Radio Tehran, Mohsen Namju, the Pupini Sisters, Dang Show, to name a few. She has performed and has had her music performed in Iran, England, Scotland, Germany, USA, Israel, and more. And in 2016, she started producing music shows for Manoto Television and is now producing a culture show for the Iran International Network. But right now, Maral Mohammadi joins me from London. Hello.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
What a pleasure it is to have you as part of this special. Listen, you grew up in Iran. Do you remember when and how you may have discovered Pink Floyd when you were a kid or a teenager growing up in Iran?
Yes, well, I had my uncle was into rock music, and he was into like break dancing. Like he was the cool kid of the family. So anything cool like this came to the house via him. And he's only about like maybe 15 years older than me. And after him, it was my brother. He's 5 years older than me, and he's my idol. And anything he liked, I liked by default, even if I had no idea what it means or why we like it. Like if he liked it, I liked it. And again, the Pink Floyd was one of those artists that he liked, and it was played in the house a lot. And I remember kind of getting into it with him, pretending I understand when I was like 8. It's like, yeah, this is cool, yeah. And I would talk to my friends at school. Yeah, did you know Pink Floyd? And no one had no idea because we were 8.
Right.
But yeah, it's I do remember. I even remember what house we were in when I
wow.
first like I remember my room.
Although Ramin Sadigh said earlier that he first got into Pink Floyd when he heard them at the age of 5. So I think he wins the prize for earliest Floyd
wow,
fan.
That is, yeah.
For those of us who grew up outside of Iran and are endlessly curious about the nature of what happened post-revolution in terms of the way culture made its way into the country, assuming that you and your brother are growing up after the revolution in Iran, how would he access Pink Floyd? Like, really, technically?
It was like one person who would have a copy via a family member that lived outside Iran, and they would make copies, and they would be the coolest person in that group of friends. And if they are great, like if they were kind enough, they would let you make a copy of their album. And I remember I remember my brother would have his friends over because he had the tape, and they would listen to it in his room because he didn't he wanted to stay the coolest one, and we didn't even have a tape recorder that would record into another
Right.
tape. So people would get our friends and my brother's friend would get together in one room to listen to this. And it was just a copy that you would get from someone who had it. There was no way that you could really get an original, and if someone had a copy that had the lyrics in it, that was like, oh my God. It was like, it would make you a king or a queen to be that cool, to know exactly what the lyrics are saying and to have it written.
And Maraljan, have you thought about what do you think it is that leads Iranians to love Pink Floyd so much?
I think the obsession with Pink Floyd is more with the album The Wall than Pink Floyd alone. But I think it's a lot of the messages that they have in the lyrics that young people and kids growing up in Iran with during revolution, after the revolution, all the oppressions, all the lack of everything, like the people being thirsty for something that would kind of speak what they are feeling.
Yes,
is one of the reasons. I think their lyrics, and also there is a simplicity, and the melodic side of their music, I think, relates to Iranian youth a lot. It's easier to follow. It's easier to connect with because of their melodies, and the melodies makes the harmony and the the arrangements easier to digest. So I think it's the melodies and the lyrics.
You talk about The Wall, and obviously, I mean, that was an internationally hit, recognized album. But Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here, Dark Side of the Moon, these were huge albums as well. There is a theory that some have that there was something significant about The Wall coming out at the same time as the revolution in Iran, and that the anti-establishment, anti-elite, repression message of The Wall is really what Iranians were responding to, and then it sort of started to flow into the DNA of Iranian youth. Do you think that is the case?
I do, yes, because it came out the year of the revolution. It came out months after the revolution, and when the film came out, also it was shown to Iranian kids or young youth from that time, seeing this. They were seeing what they wanted to say. They were seeing the explosion that they wanted to be able to have, all the anger that they had towards the establishment, the one before the revolution and after the revolution and during, like then it was the war, and then all of that anger and energy was kind of blown in their face through this album and the film.
Yes. What about musically when it comes to progressive rock? It's interesting. You said earlier there's a simplicity to Pink Floyd. I think you're absolutely right in terms of some of the melodies, but really compared to, say, a lot of the classic rock of the same era, especially going into the 80s, Pink Floyd music is quite complex. There's depth there. There's fusion complexity. And it seems like there's a yearning amongst Iranians for some depth when it comes to, I mean, maybe not in the real pop stuff that we've heard, the Persian pop, but when it comes to rock music, maybe there's a yearning for real depth. What do you think of that?
Yes, I think that comes from the importance of lyrics for Iranians in general. Like, though, even those pops that you said, there are ones that, like, if you listen to the music, it's just so bad. The production is so weak.
Right.
It's just like awful. But the lyrics speaks to people. And in groups like Pink Floyd, that, like you said, their lyrics is quite sophisticated and deep, and it has more than one meaning, and it kind of tells a story. It makes it more appealing because they care about what the person who's speaking is saying, sometimes even more than what the music is trying to say. And when I said that the simplicity about Pink Floyd, I only meant the melodies, like the fact that the melody is so followable in a way, that kind of makes the complex of the music and the arrangement easier to digest, and they can kind of connect with the music easier.
What do you think? You're a musician. When I think about the cello, I always think about cinematic kind of music, and I would call Pink Floyd cinematic music. What do you think the impact of Pink Floyd has been, if you have an opinion on this, on Iranian musicians?
I think a lot. Like, I remember, like, occasionally if a party was happening at our house and I would be able to listen to them from my room, there was I could tell they would start by covering their, like, Pink Floyd music, and then they would play something that they wrote themselves, which you could definitely, even as a child, you could tell that it comes from the same umbrella of musical taste. So I do think that definitely, especially musicians who were starting around that time, around like in the 80s, definitely a very strong influence that Pink Floyd had on them.
It's a good pleasure getting to talk to you about this. I thank you for this. You know, it's interesting to me, like, when we talk about a repressed culture, and I mean, not to take anything away from beautiful Persian and Iranian culture that we love, but we know, post-revolution, a repressed popular culture, where there just isn't access to all that's being made or everywhere else in the world, let alone access within the country to be making, rock albums or what have you. It's so interesting to see what pops up and what becomes what, as I said earlier, runs through the DNA then of the culture and the youth culture, and that Pink Floyd has become one of those things that popped up.
There might be even more subtle reasons that they became as big as they have for Iranians, like even the relationship, like what happened to Sid Barrett and the dynamic between Roger Waters and David Gilmour, like even those little things that happened between the band members may have been one of the reasons that like it could have had an effect on how popular they became. Like we need to remember that this was the time that in Iran it was not easy to have news about these people.
Yes.
Like if an album would come out, it would, like, we would hear about it. But it was like everything was with delay, and every tiniest bit of information that we heard about how this, like even the name of band members, I remember when I found that out, or the fact that, like, I didn't know for a very long time that there was a Sid Barrett before, there was like this other guy. And so all of these things that we found out kind of added to the added reasons to why they became so big for us.
And would you have found out that Masanke Roger Waters is supportive of, reform or change in Iran, or would you have, his politics? Would you have known about that?
Back then, no.
Right.
I had no idea. I learned.
I don't know if he had a lot to say about it back then, but he certainly did.
I don't know.
When the Green Movement happened, and he was quite outspoken about supporting folks in the streets. And
I remember I went to his gig in London I don't remember when it was, but yeah, we were so amazed that there were pictures of people who died in the Green Movement. There was a Neda picture. There was and we're oh yes, that's our people. He's supporting us. It was amazing that I went to that gig with 3 Iranian friends and 1 English friend, and he was amazed that we knew all the lyrics and we knew, and he was like, "This is a band from my parents' generation. Why do you guys care about them? Why?
Right.
It was very interesting. And in the gig in O2, which is this huge
arena
concert hall and arena, everyone was speaking Farsi. You would walk and you would hear more Persian than English.
Fascinating. It's such a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much for making the time. Thanks for being part of this special, and I hope we do a proper longer chat before too long.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And it was great talking to you.
Khuda.
Merci. Bye-bye.
Don't you cry. Mama's gonna check out all your girlfriends for you. Mama won't let anyone dirty get through. Mama's gonna wait up until you get in. Mama will always find out where you've been. Mama's gonna keep baby healthy and clean. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. You'll always be baby to me.
You are listening to part 3 of a Roqe Original Series, Why Pink Floyd, an Iranian Obsession. This part dealing with drugs, access, and melancholy. Coming to you on SoundCloud, Instagram, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and Telegram. Also, for all episodes in one place, you can see them at our website, roqemedia.com. roqemedia.com. Our final guest in this part 3 is a composer, a guitarist, and a photographer. He was born in 1980 in Kermanshah, and he holds a degree in photography. Ehsan Sadigh is the founder of the contemporary jazz ensemble, the Ehsan Sadigh Trio, and the group Quartet Diminished, with whom he has performed and toured around the world. Currently, Ehsan is working as a music composer for films and theater and is the leader of Quartet Diminished. But right now, Ehsan Sadigh joins us from Toronto. Hello, sir.
Hello, Jian. منم سلام میکنم به شما و شنوندگانتون.
Great to have you on the program. خوشحال شدم که to have the chance to speak to you. First things first, Ehsan, you're a guitarist, albeit in the jazz realm. How aware of Pink Floyd were you when you were growing up in Iran as a kid in the 1980s?
اصولا پینک فلوید خب یه گروهیه که نمیشه از تأثیراتش خلاص شد و در واقع همه گیتاریستا، همه موزیسین ها به یه نوعی یه روزی بالاخره پینک فلوید گوش میدن و باهاش آشنا میشن. مثلا به عنوان مثال زمانی که شما دارید گیتار یاد میگیرین و تلاش میکنین که گیتار الکتریک خصوصا بزنین، حتما روزی میرسه که یه سری به دیوید گیلمور میزنین و آهنگ شاین آن کریزی دایموند رو سعی میکنین کاور بکنین. و خب من هم مستثنا نبودم و پینک فلوید برای من این خاصیت رو داشت که علاوه بر این که ازش لذت می‌بردم سعی می‌کردم کاور هم بکنم.
That's amazing. So it's a rite of passage as an electric guitarist in Iran to have to learn the David Gilmour chops, huh? So do you remember when you first heard Pink Floyd, or how you first heard? For those of us who didn't grow up in Iran after the revolution, it's always curious to me how people accessed music. Where did you find Pink Floyd music in, say, the 1980s or even in the 1990s?
در واقع پینک فلوید از اون گروه هایی بود که شاید برای من و خیلی ها اینجوری باشه که حتی یادشون نیاد که اولین بار کی شنیدن، چون خب خیلی پینک فلوید بود، یعنی در سالهای خیلی کودکی هم به هر حال این ور اون ور پینک فلوید شنیده میشد و میتونم بگم یادمه برای اولین بار کی مثلا گریتفول دد شنیدم یا کی جفرسون ایرپلین شنیدم، ولی دقیقاً یادم نمیاد کی پینک فلوید شنیدم. منتها اینکه ما چجوری این آلبوم ها رو در واقع بعدن که خب علاقه‌مند شدیم به شکل آلبوم موزیکا رو دنبال کنیم و جدی‌تر، از کجا این موزیکا رو پیدا می‌کردیم؟ خب یه روشش دوستان بود، یه روشش یک سری موزیک فروشی های زیرزمینی بود، مثلا فرض کنیم مثل استودیو زند که موزیکایی که رو نوار ضبط کرده بودن و هنوز یه مقداریش بود از دست فروش، یا دست فروشی من داشتم تو میدون ونک که ارزگاهی میرفتم ازش میخریدم، و یا صفحه هایی که پیدا میشد تو انبار پدرهای دوستان یا برادرهای بزرگترشون.
Ehsan, one of the things that has been my question for a few people that we're speaking to as part of this series is why progressive rock is something that resonates so much for Iranians, or why it's been the place where, if you situate Pink Floyd there, where Iranians have been felt the most connection in the rock world. You know, from the outside, it's very curious, for example, to think, why didn't the Rolling Stones or the Beatles or U2 become huge household names in Iran the way Pink Floyd are? I mean, those are globally celebrated bands that are as big or bigger than Pink Floyd. But you're hard-pressed to find Iranians outside of real music fans or musicians who even know the back catalogs of any of those bands. What is it about Pink Floyd's sound and I guess the progressive rock genre that would set them apart from other huge classic bands?
دو دلیل داره به نظر من. یک اینکه خب پینک فلوید بهتره واقعا.
Okay, spoken like a true fan. Okay, all right.
واقعا میگم من فن خیلی جدی پینک فلوید نیستم، ولی میتونم بگم که پینک فلوید از یوتو خیلی بهتره. مطلب بعدی اینه که ما تو ایران چه قبل از انقلاب چه بعد از انقلاب یه طبقه ای داریم که احتمالاً همه جای دنیا دارن، یک طبقه فرهنگی که طبقه فرهنگی متوسطه و اینها معمولاً تحصیل کردن و اینها این طبقه یک نشونه هایی همیشه از خودش بروز میده، اینکه شما چه کتابی میخونین، چه موزیکی گوش میدین، چه فیلمی میبینین. یک همچین فضایی هم طبیعتاً در ایران بوده. اینم بگم که اصولاً شما وقتی که یک فضای اعتراضی دارین، چه در شعر، چه در ادبیات، چه در موسیقی، حالا به هر نوعش، این یک کمی بیشتر باب طبع اون طبقه متوسط فرهنگیه، یعنی این حرکت اعتراضی. و پینک فلوید این خصوصیت اعتراضی رو داره و داشته و این طبقه به اون سمت جذب شده و لزوماً خیلی هاشون پینک فلوید رو خیلی خوب هم نمیشناختن. اینو به این دلیل میگم که شما اگه دو بخش بکنین تاریخ موسیقی پینک فلوید رو، یعنی از آلبوم The Piper at the Gates of Dawn تا مثلا آلبوم The Dark Side of the Moon، قبلش یک بخش عمده ای از ایرانی هایی که پینک فلوید رو میشناسن یا شنیدن یا یه جایی راجبش صحبت میکنن این آلبوم ها رو نشنیدن. یعنی مثلا آلبوم اوماگاما رو نشنیدن، مثلا خیلی به مدل علاقه ندارن. ولی اون چیزی که تو پینک فلوید رو برای ایرانیا و احتمالاً خیلی جاهای دیگه دنیا پینک فلوید میکنه دواله، که در واقع یک فیلم و یک کارگردان خیلی مهم کمک میکنه به اینکه اونها در واقع این وجهه رو پیدا بکنن بین این آدم‌های طبقه متوسط که دوست دارن نشون بدن که متفاوت هستن. و پینک فلوید یکی از کارهایی که میکنه اینه برای مردم ایران.
You know, you make a very good point to make the distinction of the different eras of Pink Floyd, because the pre-Dark Side of the Moon, the late 60s and early 70s, the Syd Barrett years especially, in the first couple of records, it's very experimental music, and it's very extreme progressive, you might say, in terms of the rock metal genre and psychedelic genre.
It is more psychedelic, British psychedelic.
Exactly. Yeah. What would you say... I mean, now just speak to me as a musician, beyond any analysis of چرا ایرانی‌ها دوست داشتن Pink Floyd دوست دارن اینا, but just like as a musician, what influence, what impact has this group, this music had on you?
شجاعت و جسارت. اون چیزیه که در موسیقی پینک فلوید در ساختار موسیقیشون وجود داره. این که مجله رولینگ ستونز میگه The Dark Side of the Moon بهترین آلبوم تاریخ پروگرسیو راکه، من قبول ندارم بهترینه، ولی میتونم بگم که یکی از بهترین است از نظر شجاعت در ساختن یک همچین بافتی.
Very well said, sir. Do you have a we're going to play some music going out. Do you have a particular song or moment in a Pink Floyd album that you think of when you think of your favorite Pink Floyd music?
Shine on a Crazy Diamond.
Yeah.
Chemical. All right.
Well, we'll play a bit of that. Ehsan Sadigh, it's such a pleasure. Merci. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights. خیلی خوشحال شدم و I hope we speak again soon, brother. Merci و خداحافظ.
قربان شما، خدا نگهدار.
Remember when you were young, you shone like the sun. Shine on, you crazy diamond. Now there's a look in your eyes, like black holes in the sky.
This is Full Time for part 3 of our special series, Why Pink Floyd? This part was dealing with drugs, access, and melancholy. On part 4, we address storytelling, classics, and conclusions. Remember, you can find all 4 parts of this series at our website, roqemedia.com, where you can also find our other episodes, subscribe, and become a patron to support us. Thank you so much for listening to this and for sharing our content, and thank you to the amazing Roqe team for working on this. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Mizun Bashi.